November 2nd, 2020, Hangzhou, China. A group of men in suits rush into the offices of Alibaba, China's largest internet company, making their way into the cabin of its founder, Jack Ma.
You need to come with us right now.
As discreetly as possible, the officials rush Ma and his top executives for a meeting with Chinese financial regulators. A few days later, the hashtag Mayan, Ma's Chinese name, was censored on Weibo, China's equivalent of Facebook, and it was reported he had been warned not to leave the country. The next month, for the final episode of Africa's Business Heroes, Ma was missing from a reality show he himself had created. Ominously, his pictures were scrubbed from the gallery of judges. He also did not appear at the Shanghai Zhejiang Chamber of Commerce meeting, where he has delivered a speech every year since 2016. There was no word from him or from Alibaba, and he was nowhere to be seen. Jack Ma was missing. Ma had once been the poster boy for China, calming tempers of foreign leaders like Trump.
We will create 1 million jobs in the US.
When Trump was hell-bent on bashing his country, a country of which he was a devoted party member, regularly appearing alongside China's top leaders. The Chinese public loved him as a self-made tech mogul whom he delighted with tales of repeated rejection. Like when KFC opened a store years ago in his native Hangzhou and put out an ad to staff the outlet. "You've hired everyone except me?
You're not good enough."
He told stories of how an English teacher came to be one of China's richest men. 17 years ago, Ma started Alipay for facilitating small transactions, much like Google Pay or PhonePe today. He soon began offering consumer loans, giving names to his products: Huabi, Just Spend; GB, Just Lend; Wealth Management, Yubao or Leftover Treasure; and insurance, Xiang Hubao. Becoming so successful that at its peak in 2020, Alipay handles 75% of China's online transactions, with 700 million active users spending $17 trillion, 25 times as much as PayPal, its US equivalent. Its influence has since spread beyond China into Asia, including India, where it holds a large stake in the aspiring Alipay clone, Paytm. He was on the verge of floating the world's largest ever IPO at $37 billion, scheduled to list in the Shanghai and Hong Kong stock exchanges on November 5th. But Ant's large consumer base and their reliance on various apps within the platform was making Chinese regulators nervous. Alipay, along with its arch-rival Tencent, controlled more personal data and is more intimately involved in everyday life in China than Google, Facebook, or any other American tech giant. Alibaba's B2C platform Tmall and its C2C platform Taobao held over 50% of China's e-retail market. Alipay's and WeChat Pay's digital transactions threatened China's authoritarian regime by bypassing traditional banking systems. They feared that it would only take a small percentage of bad loans for it to snowball into a major financial crisis. A swath of Ponzi schemes and P2P lending scandals that would then unravel would only make things worse. Further, Jack Ma seemed to have grown too big for his boots, and the Communist Party were in no mood to see an entity capable of challenging its might. Just when Ma thought he was invincible, he was actually at his weakest. Speaking in the presence of luminaries such as China's Vice President Wang Qishan and past and present governors of the People's Bank of China, he criticized the very people who made the laws, blaming them for stifling innovation.
The banks here have the mentality of pawn shops, where you can't get a loan without collateral or guarantees.
Within a week of his speech, Ma and Ant's top managers were picked up from their offices and given a dressing down by regulators. The Chinese Communist Party then began muzzling the company, clamping down on its consumer lending business by making it apply for more licenses, asking it to set aside much larger capital reserves from 2% to a ridiculously high 30%, far higher than Basel III norms of 8% for banks, justifying the actions in public interest.
They charge higher fees than banks. Low-income earners and the young can fall into debt traps, destroying families and society.
To try set things right, Ma even offered an olive branch to the Chinese Communist Party.
You can have a stake in Ant if you please. The country needs it.
But they did not take up his offer, instead ordering Alibaba to return to its roots as a payment services provider. Then released a draft of antitrust rules preventing digital platforms such as Alibaba from using their dominance to bully sellers into exclusivity contracts. The next day, Ant's IPO was nixed by Chinese authorities at the 11th hour, despite having received a green light earlier. And just like that, the value of Alibaba fell by 9%, wiping out nearly $76 billion, more than double the amount it was planning to raise through its IPO that week. China's actions seem part of a global trend against monopolistic internet giants, where countries like Australia, US and the EU are taking on the might of Google and Facebook. However, in China's case, it clearly shows that all Chinese companies, however big, be they Huawei, Tencent or Baidu, have to toe the government line. Because while Ma may be the most prominent, he is not alone in a long list of missing billionaires who have fallen afoul of the Chinese Communist Party. In December 2015, Guo Guangchang, founder and chairman of the investment conglomerate Fosun International, went missing. Called China's Warren Buffett, Guo had built his Hong Kong-listed firm into a $115 billion giant with investments across Asia, Europe and North America. Later it came out that it was part of a corruption crackdown campaign that President Xi Jinping initiated after rising to power in 2012. In January 2016, fast fashion firm Metersbone temporarily halted trading of its stock after they were unable to reach Zhao Chengjian, their billionaire founder. State-run news China Daily later reported
Zhao was detained by the police to help with potential insider trading and stock manipulation case.
Real estate mogul Ren Ziqiang went missing in March 2020 after insinuating Xi to be a clown for his mishandling of the COVID-19 pandemic. 4 months later, Ren was expelled from the party despite being a long-time Communist Party member and the son of a former party official. His assets were seized and he was sentenced to 18 years in prison for taking bribes and misusing his power. Tomorrow Group Xiao Jianhua was snatched from a Four Seasons hotel in Hong Kong in January 2017, put in a wheelchair with his head covered and taken across the border to mainland China. In both cases, the government took over more than half a dozen of their businesses on flimsy charges. He has not reappeared in the public eye ever since. Fosun's Guo did later return, as did Zhao Chengjian, but none gave any explanation for their disappearances.
No comment.
X-Men actress Fan Bingbing also went missing for 4 months in 2019 for evading 248 million yuan in taxes. In an interview with the New York Times after her reappearance, she displayed the Stockholm Syndrome.
I thank the Chinese government for disappearing me.
In 2018, TikTok owner ByteDance shuttered Nian Duanzi, a seemingly harmless app that collated jokes, because they were deemed too vulgar by the CCP. The next year, they were forced to withdraw PUBG, this time because the Chinese authorities did not like the blood and gore it portrayed. Jack Ma finally made an appearance in a 50-second video on Jan 20th, 3 months after his disappearance.
The pandemic has not allowed us to meet for some time.
The video also showed him touring a primary school in Tonglo country in his hometown of Hangzhou City, the capital of Zhejiang. Following the fiasco, listing plans of e-commerce billionaire Richard Liu's JD Digits Technology Holdings have also been thrown into limbo. Their group company JD.com, China's second largest e-tailer, had complained against Alibaba's restrictive policies way back in 2015. But this time, antitrust regulators took the matter seriously, imposing on Alibaba a $2.8 billion fine for abusing its dominant position on their e-commerce platforms, forcing it to restructure and fold their two jewels, GB and Huobi, into their consumer lending business and cut their improper linkages to Alipay. China is widely expected to roll out their own digital currency no later than 2022. Their official cryptocurrency will then be the basis of all digital transactions, possibly by taking over the payment apps of Alipay and WeChat Pay, leaving Jack Ma bereft of his kingdom. Bisbo's Limerick. This is the story behind Jack Ma's fall. To pull the IPO was the Chinese party's call. Ironically, his success was the reason for the mess. Now they are muzzling him to make sure he stays small. Do join Bisbo on Discord and follow us on Instagram at GoBisbo. Subscribe to Bisbo and click on the bell icon to get notified whenever Bisbo releases a new video. Sources of all our information is listed in the video description section.